Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and in today's nature documentary, we shall be returning to my home state of Mississippi. Last time I did this sort of one-off video, it was on the harvestment of my home state, and I think you might enjoy that video if you enjoy nature, so go check that out if you want a quick little thing. But for today, I thought, why not cover a slightly more famous group? No, not spiders, those guys will get a series of their own someday, but instead scorpions. Yes, while more often stereotypically associated with desert regions like the American Southwest or the Middle East, scorpions are found in many habitats, and in fact, there are 3 species found in the moist magnolia state. Hopefully, I can teach you about them as well as a little bit about scorpions more generally. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let us answer the question of what is a scorpion? Alright, so on a basic level, outside of sponges, cnidarians, comb jellies, and a few other early groups not relevant to this video, animals are divided into 2 groups based on their early development. You see, all animals start off as a ball of cells in eggs, which develop a hole that eventually grows into a tube. What that initial hole becomes is where the 2 clades differ. Duratostomia, which includes vertebrates like humans, sea squirts, echinoderms like starfish and other weirdos, this becomes the anus. However, the second group, which is what we'll be talking about for the rest of the video, the protostomia, this first hole becomes the mouth. This clade is itself divided into 2 groups. First are the spiralia, distinguished by spiral cleavage seen in their early development, and include such animals as mollusks, annelid worms, brachiopods, and other more obscure animals not relevant for this video. The second group, however, the Edsizoa, is where we shall focus for the rest of this video, and are distinguished by edsisis growth, i.e. shedding a cuticle outer covering. This group, discounting a few stem forms, is divided into 3 main living groups. First are the Scalidophora, that include mud dragons, also called Chinorhynchia, the obscure Loricifera, and the Priapulida, better known as penis worms. Then there is the Nematoidea, which includes nematodes and the superficially similar Nematomorpha, better known as horsehair worms. But largest of the 3, and relevant for the rest of this video, are the Panarthropoda. The Panarthropoda are distinguished from the other 2 by a segmented body and paired appendages. They are themselves divided into 4 phyla. First is the Lobopodia, which are technically a paraphyletic grouping of basal forms that are ancestral to the other 3. Tardigrades, more well known as water bears and are supposedly invincible, velvet worms, and lastly, the Arthropoda, which are distinct from the others for having a mineralized exoskeleton with jointed legs. The Arthropoda are themselves divided into 4 major groups, discounting a few obscure stem ones not worth talking about as they're not relevant here. First are the Arthropoda, the most famous members of which are the trilobites, which I've made a whole 14-part series on, so not to waste too much time on them now, except to say that they were super diverse. Then there are the Myriapoda, which contains millipedes, centipedes, and their more obscure relatives like the Pauropoda and Stymphylans, as well as the largest terrestrial arthropod to ever exist, Arthropleura. Then we got the Pancrustacea, that includes crustaceans like crabs, barnacles, crawdads, and insects. Yes, really, the Hexapoda, the clade that contains insects and their cousins, the springtails, protoneurons, and 2-pronged bristletails, are all highly derived crustaceans, which people didn't know at first, which is why they were initially classified as being separate. But relevant for us is the 4th and final major grouping of arthropods, the subphylum Silicerata, so named for the presence of their unique mouth claw structures called silicerates. The silicerates are divided into 2 living clades, plus a few stem extinct ones not really all that relevant. First are the Pycognida, better known as the sea spiders, which aren't spiders, but do live in the sea and are weird, so we shall move on from them for now. And then there is the Eucelicerata, which includes various stem groups and, relevant for us, the Prosomopoda, which themselves are primarily divided into two groups, not counting some basal forms. First are the Xiphosaura, that are today represented by the horseshoe crabs, which are commonly called living fossils. And I plan on making a video on the topic at some point, so let's just leave their diversity right here for now. So the second group are the Planeturga, distinguished from the Xiphosaura by reduced appendages on the first opisthomal segment. They contain several stem genera and small early families like the Bunodidae, but what we shall be focusing on for the rest of this video are the largest group, the Decatriata. This group is itself divided into several subgroups. First are the Chasmataspida, which are an interesting group from the Ordovician to the Mid-Devonian that I may talk about in some later video, and the Scelerophorata, which includes the famous Eurypterids, more commonly known as sea scorpions, which is a bit of a misnomer. For one, despite that name, they're no more related to scorpions than any other arachnid group, nor are they only found to have lived in the sea, with there being brackish and freshwater species. Plus, for the most part, they didn't even look particularly like scorpions, with only one superfamily, the Pterygotoidea, being an exception due to the independent evolution of claws. But now, reaching their sister group, we have finally reached the Arachnida, which are itself divided into several orders and subcategories of highly disputed nature, like the Acari, which we'll talk about in a later video, and more relevant for us, the Arachnopulmata, which is basically a grouping that includes all the arachnids that are not mites, harvestmen, solifuges, i.e., camel spiders, Reniculea, the hooded tick spiders, and Palpagrady, better known as micro whip scorpions. The Arachnopulmata is itself divided into two groups. First are the Tetrapulmonata, which includes spiders and their close relatives, the vinegaroons, tailless whip scorpions, and the Schizomida, also known as sprickets or short-tailed whip scorpions. They are distinguished by particular traits that are too obscure to really get into at this moment. Second and most relevant of these are the Panscorpiones, which includes two orders. First are the Pseudoscorpions, which are these interesting little goobers that like a stinger but make up for it for having a venom gland in their claws. And finally, we come to the scorpions themselves, which we shall be focusing on for the rest of the video. These are a really ancient group, with the oldest one, Dolichophorus, dating to the Telchian stage of the Silurian, 436 million years ago. They also experimented with some odd things back in the past, with semi-aquatic forms like Waerngnoscorpio and true giants like the 3-foot-long Brontoscorpio, or the similarly sized Pulmoscorpius. While these are gone, today there is still a great diversity to be found with them, and let us discuss that now, as well as their general anatomy in this next chapter. Alright, so the scorpions are an interesting conundrum. While the basic anatomy is rather iconic, it's very poorly understood by most people. It consists of three regions. First are the cephalothorax, which has its eyes, 4 pairs of walking legs, and a pair of claws that are not legs, but rather modified chelicerae. The mesosoma is the body, which has multiple segments, and the tail is also called the metastoma. Another strange contradiction is that the scorpions are divided into just as many subgroups as, say, the likes of harvestmen, but arguably have less morphological diversity than seen in other arachnid groups. Despite this, let us discuss them briefly before focusing on those found in the state. They are divided into 4 parvorders, which, for clarification, are a level of clade that is above a superfamily but under a suborder. I don't really know why they exist, but hey. Most basal of the living groups are the Lurida, which contains only two genera. The living Canis, which contains around 46 species found in Southeast Asia, and the extinct Electrocanius, known from the controversial Burmese amber, which I've made a whole video about if you'd like to learn more about that subject. The second most basal parvorter are the Pseudocactidae, a group of 10 species unevenly divided into four genera that are primarily fossorial/cave dwellers in Southeast and Central Asia. But now let us finally start covering the scorpions that are actually found in Mississippi, starting with the one group that is native to the magnolia state, the Lurida. The Lurida, also known as the common or true scorpions, are by far the most diverse parvorter of scorpions, with three whole superfamilies found within. First are the Scorpionoidea, which are themselves divided into seven families that contain the sort of standard scorpions you think of that live in the likes of the Arabian Peninsula and Egypt, and contain a total of around 590 species. Then you got the Luroidea, a superfamily which contains three families that contain a total of 53 species. The most notable of these are the Caraboctonidae, i.e., the hairy scorpions. But it is with the last superfamily we shall see those relevant to this video, the Catoidea. The Catoidea are themselves divided into 8 families. First are the monotypic Acravidae, known from one recently extinct species that was discovered in Avalon caves of Israel. Next are also the monotypic Superstitionidae, which are not extinct and are found widely in western New Mexico, Arizona, southern Nevada, and southern California. Then we got the small family of Belizardidae, which has 3 species and 2 genera that are found in the southern caves of Europe. Then there is the slightly larger Trogloteosidae, which consists of 6 species found in the caves of South America. Then we got the Typholodontidae that has 11 species in eastern Mexico. The first big family are the Euscorpidae, which have about 170 species of harmless scorpions throughout America, North Africa, and Eurasia. They're often called short-tailed scorpions. The Chacatidae, known as the fat claw scorpions, consist of around 209 species. At last, we come to the Vajovidae, more often called devil scorpions, containing 25 genera and around 230 species, being the largest family of the parvorter. And of these, one is found here, Vajovis itself, whose name comes from the Eleusinian god of the underworld, with a single species, Vajovis carolinensis, more well known as the southern unstriped scorpion or the southern devil scorpion. As you might guess, it is found in the southeastern part of the U.S., including Mississippi, of course, but also Florida, Louisiana, the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Virginia, and Tennessee. Indeed, in most regions, it is the only scorpion native east of the Mississippi River outside of Florida. Focusing on the state itself, this species is primarily found in 2 regions, Tishomingo County and Bonita Trails Meridian. This odd distribution is believed to be due to Pleistocene glacial refugia and range expansion that was done in the post-glacial periods, though it can be found scattered between both of these regions, and basically can be found anywhere there is a mixed woodlands of moderate moisture. The animal itself is not the most impressive one, even among scorpions, mostly reaching anywhere from 1.57 to 2 inches in length. It has a generally dark reddish brown set of legs and claws and a carapace that is usually either dark brown or nearly black. It is a predator preying on smaller arthropods that it kills with its venomous sting. Don't worry, despite the name, it's not lethal to humans, being sort of akin to a bee sting. Sure, it'll hurt, but you won't really die from it. In terms of reproduction, the females will often aggregate temporarily under large rocks set upon moist soil. The females will then, after mating, allow the young, soft babies to sit on their back until they develop more pigmented exoskeletons after going through several molts, after which they will disperse. Otherwise, they might end up being cannibalized by either their siblings or their mother. Overall, a very cool critter that I and my brother have seen in the past. I sadly couldn't find one to take a picture of for this video, but as you might have noticed, I said this was the only native species. There are also two introduced species which belong to the fourth and final parvorder, the Buthida, better known as the arrow-breasted scorpions or the bark scorpions. The parvor, the Buthida, at first glance seems less diverse, and indeed it is partially true, as if we look in the fossil record, there are four families that no longer are around. These include the Archaeobuthidae from the Lebanese amber, the Paleo-Burmese Buthida, and the Succinlorencordidae from the Burmese amber, and the Proto-Buthidae from the Anzian stage of the Cretaceous. However, the two families that still persist are kind of interesting. First of which are the Microharmidae, which may or may not be a valid family. It sort of goes back and forth a lot. They are a single genus of 16 species endemic to Madagascar. But the second family, the Buthidae, is the largest family of all scorpions, containing 1,339 species or so, of which only two are found in Mississippi, both in the genus Centruroides. Centruroides means sharp-ended tail-like in English, being derived from the Greek word kenthron. Often called bark scorpions, they get their name from the tendencies of living underneath loose bark, and often, as such, get carried in firewood/lumber, which is how the two species made their way to Mississippi, albeit in opposite directions that we'll get into in a bit. First and most common of the two is Centruroides vittatus, better known as the striped bark scorpion. It is found primarily in the central Mississippian region, with numerous reports from Chickasaw, Lamar, Pike, and Rankin County. True to its name, unlike the native species, it is an overall lighter colored animal, with yellowish legs, claws, tails, and a dark body that has three orange stripes, though that can vary by individuals. It grows to around 2.3 inches long, meaning it's a bit bigger. They are native to the state of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, New Mexico, and northern Mexico, and were likely brought east via the method I talked about earlier. The species has been described as arboreal in several sources, but it can often be found in the ground. Regardless of being on the ground or in trees, it hunts smaller arachnids and insects. It is a much more gregarious animal than the native scorpion species. Males also have a far more detailed mating behavior, with them engaging in tail waving and shifting challenges until the weaker of the two back down. From there, the male holds the female and coaxes his spermatophore into her. The female will then gestate for 8 months or so before having live birth, and will allow her babies to ride her until their first molt, in which case they will then scatter to avoid being cannibalized by their siblings or by their mother. Their sting, while not deadly, is significantly more painful than that of the native southern devil scorpion, and can lead to severe swelling. Not helping matters is that this species has a preference to live inside human structures. On the flip side, due to its preferences for dry habitats of said structures, it means that This introduced species is unlikely to spread out into the rest of the state and compete with the native scorpion species, unlike other infamous invasive arthropods like the gypsy moth, which I've made a video on if you'd like to learn more about that. The second species is Centruroides hensi, also known as Hens's striped scorpion, named after Nicholas Morellus Hens, an American entomologist. It is a bit larger, reaching a maximum of 2.5 inches, and has on average a slightly more mottled brown claws and legs. But it is otherwise identical to the previous species. However, it is native to Florida, specifically the southern part of it, and its range extends into southern Georgia and the southwestern corner of Alabama, meaning that it was spread westwards into Mississippi from the logging trade. In Mississippi, it is primarily found in the southern third of the state, with reports from Copiah and Harrison County. And with that, we've concluded our coverage of the scorpions of Mississippi. I hope this has been entertaining and educating for you. Sure, they're not the most diverse group, but it's always interesting to learn more about it, and most people don't even know scorpions exist here. Personally, as a biology major, I loved making this video, and I really hope to make more, especially as we reach the end of my 2 Kirby series. Though we do have that one other series I promised to do a while ago. As for my next one-off video, we shall be continuing with another surprisingly diverse group of arthropods in Mississippi. Which one, you ask? Well, you'll have to wait and find out. Anyway, I'm the Dark Master, and if you liked this video, liked it, but if you loved it, consider subscribing and share it around. Take care, and have a wonderful day.